I know it's been a while, but we're back. Um, so this is a little makeshift, a little podcast because your boy is in Pennsylvania right now. So I don't have my camera, I don't have my mic, I don't have any of my setup, and also we don't have Cameron today. So a whole bunch of different stuff going on right now. We're also doing this really late, but got to get this out because if we don't get it out if we don't get this recorded tonight, we're not gonna make an episode for the game this week. So AJ, how's it going?
Yep, I'm good. I'm good. A good day. Chargers won today. A little whooping of the Patriots, 40 to
Whole
7.
40
So,
piece.
yep. So I'm feeling good. I like I like football today.
He does. I mean, I would too if my team put up 40, and also clinched a playoff spot in the same day. That's pretty
Yeah,
wild.
that's good. But
Well, but we are not talking about the NFL today because there are bigger games ahead of us. Talking about the college football playoff second round, where we are on the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Uh, some big games here today. Some big games to talk about today. Um, I know AJ is not too familiar with all these teams, but to be honest, there are a couple teams here that I'm not fully familiar with either. So just bear with us. We're just trying to do our best. So hopefully you guys understand.
yeah, if
So
only Syracuse made it, man. If Syracuse was in here, I'd be talking for hours.
that's a good point because we got Mr. Kyle McCord. What was it last night?
Yeah, Kyle McCord had
460 yards
460
and five
yards.
touchdowns.
Yep. Yep, he broke
All
or
time
he has like the
ACC
ACC leader. He broke
passing
every record
yards.
in Syracuse. He's my goat.
Easily like the best transfer
Oh
for
yeah,
best decision for his career.
for sure.
All right,
But
so we'll talk about the game that's happening first, which is on New Year's Eve, 7:30 kickoff. My squad, Penn State versus the Boise State Ashton Genties. Just kidding, Boise State Broncos. But basically, in the media, it's pretty much the Boise State Ashton Genties. If we're being honest, this kid is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I know AJ, you don't watch too much outside of
no,
Syracuse,
no,
but
I've heard of him for
I,
sure.
yeah, we're looking at over 2,600 yards from scrimmage and 30 touchdowns. Like any other year, this kid's Heisman. If we're being honest, this kid's Heisman any other
You
season,
know,
man.
it's just I mean, the only reason Travis Hunter got it is just because he plays both sides. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
rather
Like,
he plays them above average, so that's the only reason.
so that's I'm not gonna say I don't know if I like fully agree with you on that because the kid still
Uh,
had he still
hey,
finished like
tonight he still had 100 yards and a touchdown. So it's like, even though they
well no
got
you
whooped
say
by
well
BYU
you say above average. I mean like he's playing like pretty good on both sides of the ball.
on offense, he's playing amazing. I don't. His defense obviously is going to be a little. But you'd probably get tired
But
if you played both sides all game.
that's a good point. That's a good point. But let's move on from that. We're gonna talk about this matchup because this matchup's interesting because Boise State, most of the time when people talk about Boise State, they talk about how they're in the Mountain West and they don't play many people.
Mm.
But what people sometimes fail to bring up is that this team lost by only 3 points in Autzen Stadium against the Oregon Ducks earlier this season. Like it's tough to like analyze that game also when you go back because I'm pretty sure Oregon was banged up at that point in the year, and that was also when they weren't playing their best ball. So it's tough to analyze this Boise State team on how they're gonna play on New Year's Eve. But if honestly, if I just had to single this out to one matchup, this is the only matchup that matters pretty much throughout the game. Is the Penn State run defense versus Ashton Genty. And I don't think there's really any other. There's no real other matchup that people would focus on otherwise, because you're talking about the best running back in the country versus like a top five, top six run defense in the country. Yeah, like this will be interesting because a lot of times when people bring up the Oregon game, they bring up, oh, Ashton Genty had 200 yards and three touchdowns. But you go back to the Big Ten championship, against Oregon for Penn State, Penn State almost ran for 300 yards. So I don't know how good that Oregon run defense really was. So I don't know. What do you when I know you were doing a little research before we started recording. So what do you when you look at the numbers? What do you think could potentially happen here?
I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I think Penn State shuts Ashton Genty down. I mean, as much as Boise State has been surprising in the fact that I mean, I hate saying that they haven't played anybody at all, but I mean, it is kind of true. But they still have been, producing. That's all that matters is that, you can only play who's in front of you, and they've just been winning. Genty's been doing great. But I think that when it comes to the playoffs, teams scheme a little differently. You got a little more talent. I think that unfortunately Genty's his run ends here.
Oh, all right. So I mean, I don't. I'm not gonna say I disagree with you. All right. Sorry for the intermission or little cut in between. Um, but back to what we were talking about. Talking about how we both think that this could be the end for the Boise State Broncos because when you look at the sheer matchups here, talent versus talent, Penn State is just way better across the board. If we're being honest, this Boise State especially on offense, Boise State's offense versus Penn State defense outside of Ashton Genty, there's not much. There's not much. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
Um, I will say though, their quarterback Maddox Madsen looks really good with 2,700 yards and 22 touchdowns, only 3 picks, and they have a threat on the outside that can get the job done. But like outside of that, there's no one really. They run the ball a lot, like
Yeah,
a lot.
I think
We're looking at
it's easy to be a quarterback when you don't have to. You just have to manage the game and just hand the ball off every now and then.
exactly like that's the thing. So I feel like this guy hasn't been really tested this year,
Yeah.
and he's going to be against Penn State. He's definitely going to be tested. This game will come down to if Penn State can play cover one, leave their corners on islands, and stack the box. If they can do that, it's game over. It's absolutely game over because if Penn State has eight guys in the box and Boise State's receivers can't beat Penn State's corners on the outside, this game is absolutely going to be cooked. Um, and then when you look at Boise State's defense, they don't dominate guys. They don't dominate teams. They give
Uh,
up 23 points a game.
they do have a
Uh,
good defensive rush though, or not? Or rush defense.
their rush defense is good, but their pass defense is awful at 258 pass yards a game.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's more if they're like a bend don't break, so they like give up yards. Like I said, we haven't watched a lot of games this
No, they're
year.
definitely not
That
Boise State.
yeah, we just kind of hear about Ashton Genty in the news a lot. But 258 passing yards a game, that stat doesn't lie. There's very obviously some issues in that secondary um, that Penn State could potentially find holes in, especially with Tyler Warren at tight end, who's won the Mackey Award and is, in my opinion, undoubtedly the best tight end in the country. Um, this will just be a if this game will either be a shootout or this game will be Penn State domination, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree or if
No,
you
I
or if
think
you
I
like.
think Penn State definitely will have a good scheme for them. I mean, like you said, that Boise State, they got tested versus Oregon, and their quarterback, I don't even think had like 200 yards. I think pretty much when you leave it up to the quarterback, it's not that he's bad, like he's a good game manager, but I think he's more of like he's like a Brock Purdy. He's kind of just like, get the ball to his weapons. You don't want to rely on him for them to win the game. So I think Penn
That's a
State's going
that,
to come to play.
that's a good point, I'm not gonna say I disagree with you on that. If especially if um if Penn State's defense really locks in, and
Yeah.
forces Boise to throw the ball. I think this game's gonna get ugly. Um, but at the same time, I'm still not counting out Boise State by any means. I think this team, they've heard the chatter all week, build all the build up to this game. So I think they will try their absolute hardest. I just don't know if it can hold up for a whole game. So if I had to make a prediction on this game, I would say probably Penn State 38, probably Boise State about 24. And I think the main stat line that people are going to look at is how good is Ashton Jeanty going to do against this run defense. I think he can have a lot of yards, but his yards per carry is not going to be great. I think his
Uh,
yards per carry is going to be like maybe like 4 or like the high like 3.8, 3.9. He'll get a shit ton of carries, but he's not going to just break run after run after run after run like he normally does.
yeah, I mean, I think I'm somewhat similar there with you. Like, I'm gonna say like a 30 to like a 14, and I'm gonna say those 14 come from like garbage time. I think it'll be mostly like, I think that first half will be, Penn State controlling the game, and then, they might let up a couple big plays at the end, but for the most part, I think Boise State will probably, you know, probably just have to go home on that one.
Yeah. So we're pretty much very similar on this game.
Uh,
Obviously, I'm a little biased, but I think when you look at talent, it's gonna be tough, especially if like Abdul Carter can just go crazy and rush the quarterback. I mean, we're looking at a guy who's projected top 5 pick here, and
yeah.
also Vegas does think very similar at -12. The only game that's higher than this is the next game we're gonna talk about, as Texas versus Arizona State. That is the only game this week that or yeah, this upcoming week for the quarterfinals that actually has a bigger spread, which I don't know if I agree with, to be honest with you. I think Arizona State is hands down the most disrespected team in this playoff, and I'll tell you why. From one man and one man only, Mr. Cam Scattaboo. We talked about this guy when me and Cameron were doing our live reactions to the CFP rankings, and we both agreed with it. We both agreed on this and saying Arizona State, they're a squad. They are 100% a squad. This is a team that absolutely dominated Iowa State in their Big 12 championship game, which was the last time they played. So I would not count this team out. I really wouldn't. We're looking at Cam Scattaboo over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, and 22 touchdowns. Probably the second or third best running back in the country behind Ashton Jeanty for sure. But then also maybe Caleb Johnson at Iowa, who is another one who's up there. So you never know. But this offense is cooking. This offense is cooking. They're scoring at a 33 points per game, about 224 pass yards, which isn't that high, but then they almost rush for 200 yards a game on average. And this is a Power Four conference. This is not the Mountain West. Like, we got to remember this, guys. This is not a Mountain West conference like Jeanty plays in. Again, we're not hating on Jeanty. He obviously just plays who he plays. It just so happens to be that they're in the Mountain West, so he obviously is going to have more yards than like a Cam Scattaboo. But this team is good. This is the Big 12 champions. This is the Big 12 champions, guys. Like let's stop sleeping on them. But when you look at a whole in this team, it's got to be the defense. I'm not saying they're a bad defense, but when you're going up against that Texas offense, man, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. I mean, we're looking at an ASU defense that gives up 21 points per game. Now, yardage wise, though, they really don't give up much. Only at a 202 pass yards per game and a 107 rush yards per game. So I don't really know where the points. I don't know where they're scoring points. I don't know if there's like turnovers. I don't know if the. But I'm not gonna lie. I have not watched Arizona State games this year.
Yeah, neither
I'm just
have I.
gonna keep it honest. I know obviously you haven't.
No, no, not a
But
big
like
Arizona State guy.
but I just don't know where these points are given up from. But if there is a turnover issue, Texas could definitely capitalize on that. I mean, this is a dangerous offense. I mean, You probably have watched a couple Texas games this year, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So you can kind of uh, make an assumption about this game.
I mean, one thing I will say is that Quinn Ewers, I mean, he's been getting overlooked. So I think if he wants to, get some draft stock and pass some of those other quarterbacks like the, Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, some of those other guys that are constantly being talked about, he's gonna have to make a good run in this playoff. Texas, they've been not as dominant as they should be, I'll say.
Uh, yeah, I don't fully disagree with you. Um, but what I will agree with you on is I think Quinn Ewers is very overlooked. I think Quinn Ewers is probably the most hated quarterback in college football, and honestly he shouldn't be. Why, why Arch Manning is being viewed as this guy that's going to be the savior of Texas football already? It just blows my mind when this kid is he's. We're looking at 26 touchdowns, 10 picks, and he's been hurt a lot this year
Yeah.
too. Like he's had, I will say, he's definitely had the interception problem, but like, man, he is the leader of this Texas offense, and I don't think that's I don't think that should be overlooked. But unfortunately, it is, which I think could really end up making this Texas team even that more dangerous. And then even when you look at their playmakers in the backfield and on the edge, you're looking at two running backs who both have over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. You don't see that often in college football. I'm pretty sure like the only two other teams that would have that off the top of my head that I can think of would be Penn State and um, Ohio State. But outside of that, this is impressive to see it. Two running backs over 1,000 yards from scrimmage being Wisner and Blue. And also guys that score a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah.
Between the two of them, also 18 touchdowns. So this Texas team, they score a lot. They score a lot. Also their defense is crazy. I'm pretty sure they lead the nation in points per games allowed. The only one that might be higher is Ohio State. Uh, or I guess I should say lower if we're talking defense. But um, yeah, like this defense is crazy. The only teams that really have killed their defense this year is actually honestly only Georgia. That's it.
I mean, killed is a little
Well,
excessive.
the first game they killed them. The first game they
Yeah.
killed them. The second game, I guess the second game was really close.
Yeah,
But,
second game was closer for sure.
yeah, I just if I had to make a prediction for this game, I would honestly say that Cam Scatterboot goes crazy. I honestly think Cam Scatterboot could go crazy here. Especially, I mean, obviously they're gonna focus on him, but this guy is more of a receiving back than say a Genti is. And I think that's gonna add another element to this game. And also, you gotta look at their quarterback, who is a dual threat quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback. He almost has 400 rush yards on the year, and he has 5 touchdowns as well on the ground. And also, they got Tyson on the outside, who's a threat too, at 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. Like,
I mean,
that's scary, man.
Texas still had I'm pretty sure that they had the second best defense in college football this year, though, in terms of statistics. But I mean, I think that I think that Arizona State will cover the spread, but I just can't see them winning, though. I think this game means too much to Quinn Ewers that and his career that I can't see him losing this one.
I mean, I'm not gonna disagree with you. I really don't see. I don't know if Arizona State can win this game. I just don't see. I just really, honestly, for some reason, I don't see Texas blowing this team out, especially with how they played Clemson in the first round. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, the score wise, they weren't the closest game. Versus, I think the only game that was closer in scoring was Indiana Notre Dame, but I mean, it was a 7 point game in the fourth quarter before before their backup running back Blue took a 77 yarder to the house. So Texas was definitely on their heels that game. So I think Arizona State, again, one of those teams that I'm sure has heard the disrespect around their name, just like Boise State has. And I think this game could really end up coming down to the wire. Um, I'm not going to take Arizona State, but if I had to make a prediction for this, I'd say Cam Scattaboo goes for 150 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Um, but I think also I don't know how the Arizona State defense is going to hold up against this Texas offense, which was I will say last game they were playing without Isaiah Bond. I don't know if he's going to be healthy, um, which is a very big threat on the outside. I'm pretty sure Isaiah Bond is he a freshman or is he a like a sophomore or something?
Oh,
I know you.
I wouldn't even know.
I think he's younger, so I think he can come back, but he also might be a draft prospect too. Besides the point, um, that would be a big loss if they don't have him. But I really don't. I think they have enough playmakers with Helm, their tight end, and Golden, their other wide receiver. That I think their offense will be too much for Arizona State's defense. But like I said, I think Arizona State can cover the spread. So if I had to make a prediction for this, I think Texas would win. Let's go with 35 to say uh, Arizona State probably 28. I honestly think this could be a close game. I really do.
Close. I'm saying. I mean, like I said, I think that Arizona State covers the spread at 12.5, but I'm gonna have to say it'll probably be like a 31 to like 20. I'm getting a 31 to 20 Texas. Like I said,
I can
I
see
think
that.
that it just means too much for Texas to give it up in the first, or not first round, but like second round.
Okay, I can see that. I can see that, especially with how good their defense has been playing all year. I think
Uh,
giving up 20 could definitely be a that could definitely be a possibility where they get shut down. Like what you're saying is you could probably see like it's close game early, but then Texas
yeah,
is
I
kind
think
of like
Texas. I think in the first half, I mean, because like we saw last game against Clemson, it was like most of the quarters were evenly scored, but Texas had like one quarter where I think they scored three touchdowns. I think it'll be something like that where it's like it's pretty much like pretty even for the most part, but I think Texas will they'll have better adjustments like I said their defenses will have pretty good adjustments. I think when it comes down to like team when certain teams have like a like you said this with Scattaboo, I think when it comes down to adjustments, it's easy to adjust onto one person, so it's gonna have to be you know Arizona State. It'll come down to their quarterback. Another quarterback that has to be able to make the plays for the team to win, not just rely on one person.
yeah. I can definitely see that, but yeah, I think Texas will end up moving on. Then the next game we should definitely talk about is this one. Now this game's interesting because I'm sure everyone has heard the news that Carson Beck has a torn UCL. So he needs surgery and he's not going to be able to play the rest of the season. So he today declared for the draft, which makes this game that much more interesting than it already was because now we're playing with Gunnar Stockton, their backup QB, versus a Notre Dame defense that has a really good secondary. This game is interesting to me because, like I said, with the backup QB, but also the Notre Dame offense versus the Georgia defense is going to be intriguing to me because this Notre Dame offense they they don't throw the ball as much as you think they would. Um, this team averages 224 rush yards a game. Um, and versus a Georgia defense this year, shockingly, outside of the Texas games of all games, haven't really been able to stop the run as well. So this will be interesting what happens in this game with that. I don't know if you've made that observation when you kind of were looking over some stuff. Um, but like this Notre Dame offense is very run heavy.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is that I personally have not been sold on Georgia. Even though they have a pretty solid record, I still think Carson Beck is a very average quarterback for being on that team. Personally, I think there's been plenty of games where he's, at least the two games that they did lost, they almost even lost to Georgia Tech. I mean, I just think that there's so many games where his mistakes are so costly that, I mean, even if he was playing, I still think Notre Dame is I think I would have Notre Dame winning anyways.
So you're saying like Carson Beck being in really being out really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was gonna be a big deal either way. I mean, I think it'll be a close game for sure, just because it's a pretty good matchup. But I think overall, I think Georgia has ETN. I didn't think ETN did as good as he could have this year.
Well, ETN has had he started poor, and just as he was starting to hit his stride, which was the first Texas game in the
Yeah,
middle of the season, he got hurt, which really kind of I mean his stats really don't pop out to people like when you really look at the box his overall season. It's not that crazy, but in all fairness, he really either never got going, and when he was getting going, he got hurt. So he kind of have a an up and down season. But when he's on the field, I think he is the biggest. I think he's the biggest difference maker for this Georgia offense. I genuinely think he's the best player on this Georgia offense. From what I've seen this year when I watch Georgia games, is a lot of the time, um, like especially in those Texas games for sure, especially like this last one, he he actually is the only person to score touchdowns against Texas this year on Georgia, which is crazy to think about.
wow.
Um, but he's a difference maker, and when he's on the field, we're looking at a top 10 running back in the country. I believe personally, I really think so, talent wise, and
Top
just
10?
overall. I really think he can be a top 10 running back when he's fully healthy. There's a reason why this was a big deal when he transferred from Florida to Georgia this year. Um, people were very excited for him, and based off the numbers that Notre Dame's defense gives up, we're looking at 138 rush yards per game that they give up, and it's that could really cost them. Although when you do look at it, they might look to stop the run, especially with Gunnar Stockton now being in.
I mean, yeah, I mean, now that Carson Beck is out, I think their pass game is definitely going to lack even more. I think that, like you said, with a backup quarterback, I think it'll end up being like a if Florida State made it without Jordan Travis kind of thing. I mean, you're gonna have a problem. He's gonna have to try to win the game. I just can't see a backup quarterback coming in there against a pretty dominant Notre Dame team and just
See, the only reason I disagree with you on this is because the backups that were at Florida State weren't as good as Gunnar Stockton, and also the quarterback that would have ended up playing was their third string. So I think this is a little bit different than that Florida State situation. Also because they went out and they beat Texas with that backup in the second half, who literally led them on that first drive and scored right away out of the second half. So I think Gunnar Stockton's a dog. I honestly think Carson Beck being out could be a blessing in disguise for Georgia. Honestly, I'm not saying Carson Beck's bad. I honestly am a lot higher on Carson Beck than a lot of people are. Um,
Yeah.
but I think Gunnar Stockton, because he's a dual threat. He was the number one dual threat quarterback coming out of high school, I believe. Um, he can run, which like he can run as a quarterback, and that can really add a different element to this Georgia offense. Um, but when we look at the Notre Dame offense again, this is interesting. I did not realize this. Like I said earlier, Notre Dame doesn't throw the ball, and when I say they don't throw the ball, they really don't throw the
Good
ball.
enough.
They don't have a single wide receiver or tight end um over 500 yards this year. I don't I honestly don't think this is. It's got to be the only playoff team that doesn't have a receiver over 500 yards. I don't know if I could be wrong, and like the real app like just told me differently. I did not see a wide receiver on there that had over 500 yards, which is very shocking to me.
Yeah, no, they definitely run the ball a lot. I'm pretty sure, they also have a quarterback that can run the ball. I mean, but at the end of the day, I think they had like 40 points per game almost. I mean, they still scored the third most touchdowns in college. I think that, when it comes down to it, they just have guys that make plays at the right time, and that's sometimes all you need.
That's a good
And
point,
and
and I
it's easy to
think
rely on that defense as well. That defense is just as good. So, I mean, most
that
of the
is
games you
true.
don't have to pass too much because they're already up by, a few scores by half. So really, you don't have to worry about it too much.
That is a good point. We're talking about potentially the best secondary in college football. Um, they only give up 157 pass yards per game, and they probably have the best safety in the country, being Xavier Watts. The only other guy that might be better is the guy opposite of him playing is Malachi Starks, but Xavier Watts is very very good. He has 6 interceptions this year, and he had a I think a 99 yard or a 100-yard interception for a touchdown against USC earlier this year.
Yeah, I
So
think he
this
did 100.
this will be interesting if the Georgia offense can't really run the ball. I'm very interested to see what this pass game will look like against such a dominant defensive secondary. Because especially also outside of Indiana, I feel like Notre Dame hasn't necessarily been tested this year.
I mean, they did play. I mean, Army was ranked, but Army was not
Army
the
looked,
not the hardest opponent.
yeah,
I mean, USC seemed like it was a pretty good game. I think that was only like a couple score difference. I think that besides that, they haven't played the best of teams, but I mean, like I said, you can only play who's in front of you, and
that is
who's been in
true.
front of them, they've just rolled
I
over
will say
them.
this though, because they're in the only thing that you can counteract to that argument with Notre Dame, they're independent. So they don't pick they pick every single team on their
Yeah.
schedule versus like a Georgia who gets handed their conference schedule. They don't pick their conference schedule, but Notre Dame picks every single team that they play. So it honestly it is kind of their fault that they don't play good teams sometimes.
I mean,
And like you
I think they
said,
did play in the beginning Texas A&M,
that
which
is
they're
true,
not the
but
best, but
I mean, playing Texas A&M on the road is definitely a test for sure. Definitely a test for sure. But especially after yesterday, Texas A&M blew a 17-point lead to USC, which I guess Notre Dame also did play.
yeah.
But I don't know. I'm definitely not as high on Notre Dame as a lot of other people are. But I don't know. This will be interesting. This game will definitely be interesting. I'm very interested to see how the Georgia offense plays, and I'm very interested to see how the and the Notre Dame offense plays against Georgia's defense, and also which Georgia team will show up. Are we gonna get the Texas Georgia team, or the versus Texas Georgia team, or are we gonna get the Georgia team that played Georgia Tech super close?
Yeah.
Like you just never know which Georgia team you're gonna get. But I think if I had to make a prediction on this game, I think Travis Etienne has a great game. I think Gunnar Stockton proves a lot of people wrong, and he doesn't make the big mistakes that a lot of people think he's gonna make. And um, I think that Georgia defense comes to play, and I think they don't necessarily play lights out, but they make the right plays when they have to. Especially with the guy when you have the butt. I'm pretty sure he was the Butkus Award winner, uh, Jalen Walker. I know he won it. I think it was the Butkus Award, which is linebacker of the year. But Jalen Walker is an absolute stud. Either way, I think he makes a couple big plays when he has to, and I really think that the Georgia will come to play knowing that they know they have to play their best game to win. So if I had to make a prediction on this game, I'd say Georgia gets the job done here. I think they win 24-20. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, which I think the over under I think correlates with that. I think this is the lowest over under of the college playoff games. And also the spread is very close too. I think this will easily be a one score game when it's all said and done.
I mean, personally, I think Notre Dame pulls off the upset on this one. I just think that, as a quarterback that hasn't played all season, I mean, you don't have much time to get chemistry with your team. You don't have much time to, you don't have the in-game experience. I think that it's going to be tough. I think when you're throwing into a game against the number 3 defense in the country, it's not necessarily the position that you want to be put in, especially when it's I think it's like the 9 o'clock game, so it's going to be pretty much prime time. Everybody's all eyes are on you. I think the spotlight's going to be too bright for him, and I'm personally taking Notre Dame to win. I'm gonna say it's probably, I'm gonna say similar to you. It'll be a lower scoring game just because I don't think Notre Dame has the best offense. I think it'll be
Yeah,
definitely a
yeah, you're
defensive
looking at
game.
it. Yeah, you're looking at a team that runs the ball a lot versus a team that
Yeah,
doesn't have their starting quarterback. So this is going to be a very
I
run
think
heavy
Notre Dame
game.
will. Yeah, Notre Dame will definitely control the clock though. I'm gonna say it'll probably be. I'm gonna say like a 27-20 kind of game, and it's gonna be Notre Dame winning.
Okay, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that for sure. Um, Hopefully for Cam's sake, Georgia gets the win. But hopefully for our other friend Ty's sake,
Yeah, Ty. I
uh,
want to see Notre Dame
Ty
make a good
hopefully
run.
I know Ty's gonna be trolling the next couple days coming up to it. He's been doing it all season. I'm sure he's definitely gonna do it to Cameron when it's coming up. But also, hopefully, guys, there's some exciting news coming up with these games. If Georgia and Penn State win, they play each other in the Orange Bowl, which is in Florida, is where we will be, and they won't be far from us. So if those two teams win, we most likely will be going to the game together, um, which will be pretty cool for content wise. But if either of those teams win, I'm pretty sure I know I'll be going to that game if Penn State wins. I'm not sure if Cameron's gonna go if just Georgia wins. Um, but be on if either of those teams win, be on the lookout for some cool content of us being at the game. Um, so yeah, hopefully those two teams win. It'll be really cool to get some content from the stadium and stuff like that. So besides the point, we are gonna go to the game of the second round. In my opinion, this game, I don't know how we got to this game in the second round, but this game should not have been in the second round. This game could be the national championship damn near. We are looking at the rematch of the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Oregon Ducks. This is going to be game of the year. It's as simple as that. This is going to be game of the year. We are looking at two teams that played potentially the game of the year the last time they played. And now they're more fired up. They're on a bigger stage, being the Rose Bowl, probably the biggest stage outside of the national championship. If we're being honest, the atmosphere is going to be crazy. The two teams are going to be ready to play. This will be easily the game of the week, probably game of the year. If I'm being honest, I really don't think there is going to be a better game than this.
Yeah, I think last time, I think the deciding factor was Ohio State did have a couple of turnovers there, which, I mean, it kind of ruined their momentum a little bit. Like you said, it definitely was I was able to watch that game. It was a really good game to watch. And I think the rematch will be definitely be similar to this one. Obviously, it's a close spread in Ohio State's favor, but I mean, I can't believe that because Oregon State has been, or not Oregon State, Oregon's been pretty good this year. But I mean, I think Dylan Gabriel, he's another one that went kinda overlooked by some of these other quarterbacks. I don't know why, but you
That's
know,
that's a that's a very good point. I don't think anybody.
Oregon always produces good quarterbacks. Bo Nix doing good, Herbert's doing good. Dylan Gabriel I think will be right up there next with them.
I don't. I've heard this a lot, and I kind of agree with it. Dylan Gabriel will most likely go down as a top five college quarterback, maybe all time if you honestly just look at stats for his career. He honestly, as a college quarterback, could be the best quarterback in the nation right now. I mean, we're talking about a Heisman finalist, but his game won't translate to the NFL, in my opinion. It really might not. He's not that big of a quarterback, and a lot of the time he if you look at this Oregon offense, and this is what makes them so dangerous, is Oregon doesn't take deep shots, which is crazy to say with how good this offense is. But what Dylan Gabriel does a lot, and I'm not hating on him for it, this is just what works, and it works extremely well. Dylan Gabriel throws a lot of medium routes to short routes, and their playmakers make plays. Which, if you can do that and it works like crazy, go for it. Honestly, the Oregon offense, they played Penn State in the Big Ten championship, and me and my dad were talking about this. This is hands down the best offense in the nation, and it's not particular. It's honestly not close. Obvious, I think that the next closest is the team they're playing, being Ohio State. But this Oregon offense is just unreal. But we're not talking about Dylan Gabriel's future. We're not talking about the future. We're talking about right now. And this kid, like I said, Heisman finalist. He's leading the number one team in the nation, 13-0 record, only team in FBS that's undefeated. This team's really good. This team is unreal, especially that offense. Like I said earlier, we're looking at a quarterback that has 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 INTs. He is a running quarterback too. I forgot to add his rushing stats to this, but I'm sure they're well above average for most QBs. But then they have just playmaker after playmaker after playmaker. This game, when I looked this game up, before I even looked up any players, this was the game that I could think of the most players off the top of my head. That's how many playmakers we're looking at in this game. Like, this Oregon offense has their running back who is even crazier too. I think his first name is Jordan. I think his name is Jordan James. Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, Terrence Ferguson at tight end. They even have their second tight end who's an athletic monster. This offense is insane. Absolutely crazy. I'm sure you've watched a couple Oregon games this year. You can probably agree with me on that.
I mean, Oregon's definitely been dominant. I mean, I watched that Penn State game. Unfortunate for you, but that game was...
It didn't end up hurting us that bad, I'm not going to lie.
No, but it was pretty high scoring, like you said. I think when it comes down to it, Oregon can... Like, they had the game against Wisconsin where it was like, I think it was like 16-13. I mean, then you have a game like where your game, it was like 45-37. I think when it comes down to it is when Oregon needs to play defensive games, they can play defensive games. And when they need to shoot out, they can shoot out. I mean, I think that they're flexible when it comes to just, playing both sides of the ball. It's either they play one side perfectly or they play the other side perfectly. So I think it's it's going to be like, that last Ohio State game. It was like, 32-31 or something like that. So it's like, they can easily play a shootout. They can easily play defense, but they can't easily do both.
Yeah, and that's why I want to bring up here is because me and my dad, when we were watching that game and we talked about it after, honestly, Oregon's defense isn't that great. When you really look at it, their defense, if they're not on, you can really attack them and score a lot of points. But as long as that Oregon defense holds a team to under 40 points, that offense can go win the game. Just like 100%. and that's what makes them so dangerous. Like you said, is they can win any kind of game this year. They've done it both ways. They've done blowouts. They've done close games. They've done defensive games. They both ways, all ways you can think of. The Oregon Ducks can win in any fashion.
Yeah.
But their opponent, the Penn State owners themselves, the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's unfortunate, but I know my role as a Penn State fan. I can't ever talk any smack to Ohio State until we beat them again. But that's besides the point. We're looking at an offense who absolutely just dismantled Tennessee in that first round. I mean, you see it there on the screen, 42-17.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought Tennessee wasn't that good, but I was not expecting Ohio State to just come out and absolutely punch them in the mouth like they did. I think this can be this. This is honestly the scariest team in college football right now, because they are playing with nothing. They are playing like there is nothing to lose, and that is very scary when you have a roster that is worth that amount of money. I think it was like $20 million what they spent on that roster in the offseason, and they're playing lights out. You're looking at Will Howard, who's going crazy. You got debatably the best running back duo in the country being Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. And then you have debatably the best wide receiver duo in the country with possibly the best wide receiver in the country, even though he's only a freshman, being Jeremiah Smith, and then his partner in crime being Emeka Egbuka. I'm sure you've seen a lot about this Ohio State team. You've seen the highs, you've seen the lows, being that Michigan loss, being the Oregon loss, but then how they just absolutely messed up Tennessee. What do you look at this Ohio State team that just jumps off the board to you?
Well, one thing I will say personally, I think that Judkins is one of the more overrated running backs in the college football scene. I'm just putting that out there. I think people overhype him way too much. I mean, he's not even the best running back on his team. I'm putting it out there right now. I think Henderson is a lot better. I think that, everybody loves to talk about Judkins and his spin moves and this and that, but I'm not I'm not sold on all that.
that might have to do with college football 25, if we're being honest.
But I mean, still, Will Howard, I think he came from TCU was his last team?
No, Kansas State.
Kansas State. I knew it was a purple team. I couldn't remember, but
he was with what the hell is that? It doesn't matter. The running back that's on the Cowboys now.
Either way, Will Howard, he did fill in for Kyle McCord pretty well. I can't lie, but
he did.
I think Will Howard, he definitely can play. And when you say that, you have to give it to they don't just have a running back that does everything for them. They have a quarterback that can easily make just as much plays as everybody else. And I think this game we'll see another shootout. I don't think Oregon's stopping this team. I think even though Ohio State, their defense, I'm pretty sure is number 1 in points per game.
They are. It was between them and Texas, but they do have the slight edge. They give up 0.6 less points per game than Texas does.
Yeah, I think despite them having the best offense, I think when it comes to especially conference rivalries, I think it's just going to be one of those games that it's just going to be a shootout pretty much. The over-under is 55.5. I think that goes over. I'm going to say probably it's going to be somewhere in that 30s, 30 to 30 range again. And
this game is the highest over-under of the week.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's the underdog. I'm taking that. I'm taking Oregon to not only cover the spread, but I think they're going to end up being the ones to win again.
And I'm not going to disagree with you here. Although, like I said, Ohio State is playing with nothing to lose. This Oregon offense, I genuinely don't know if I've seen an offense when they are clicking. It's been a long time since I've seen an offense this good. I think you have to go back, honestly, to 2020 Bama or 2019 LSU to really see an offense that is this diverse and this aggressive with or actually not aggressive. I take that back. This diverse being they can run the football, they can pass the football, and also they are just so efficient. They get chunk plays, but they don't take. I looked this up. They are like 115th in the country in pass air yards. So Dylan Gabriel doesn't throw the ball downfield ever. A lot of it is yards after the catch, which it's if your playmakers are constantly doing that, that just means that like either no one can guard them or it's hard to tackle them in open space. And that's why this is a shootout last time, because even though Ohio State has amazing players on defense, being Caleb Downs, Jack Sawyer, it's tough. It's tough to tackle them in open space and to get them to the ground. So that's why this Oregon offense is just dangerous. And like you said, I agree with you. I think this is gonna be a shootout.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a close game like it was the first time, and I think Oregon gets it done again. This is my national champion pick. I know they're the number one overall team, but this truly is, in my opinion, the best team in the best team in the country. And I don't think it's close. I think it's between them and Ohio State or Texas right now. But I think with how dominant their offense can be, just like takes over any good defense in college football. So if I had to make a prediction on this game, it's gonna hit the over. Oregon's gonna cover. I would say, if we're being honest here, I would say 38 Oregon, 35 Ohio State. This is going to be a very close game. It's going to be very high scoring. And also, last time, I didn't even bring this up. So when I brought up the pass area yards, if you look back on that Ohio State-Oregon game, that was one of the few games this year that Oregon was able to actually hit deep shots with Evan Stewart and Tej Johnson, because Denzel Burke just got cooked in that game. He could not guard them. So I think that could happen again. And I think Oregon's playmakers are going to make enough plays to where they need to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Oregon did a pretty good job shutting down the run. Judkins, like I said, overrated. He didn't do nothing against Oregon last time. I don't even think he had barely
I'm sorry to
2
cut you
yards
off,
of
but
carry.
this Ohio State offense really doesn't run the ball as well as you think they would with how good their duo is. Now they average 169 rush yards per game, but if you really look, if you really look at their run game in like around the second half of the year, once they got to like conference opponents, they really weren't able to run the ball as effectively as you think they would with how talented their backfield is, which is definitely something to look at. But keep going with your prediction.
Yeah, I think if Oregon's able to shut down Henderson and keep Judkins contained just like they did last time, I think that they will end up dominating the ball a little more, because their time, I'm pretty sure Oregon had less time of possession than Ohio State did. I think that when it comes down to it, maybe if Oregon forces another couple turnovers like they did last time, I think Oregon will definitely take the game here. Like you said, I mean, a 38-35. Like I said, I think it's somewhere in those like mid to high 30s when it comes down to that final score. I think no matter what the score is, Oregon, like I said, I still have Oregon winning at the end of the day.
It's no score prediction. You just like
Nah.
no matter how high, no matter how low,
I think if it's
Oregon's winning.
38-35, if it's 40-37, if it's
Or like
don't matter.
even if they both offenses drop a dud and it's like 20-13, you still think
Yeah, I
Oregon's
still
getting the
think
win.
yeah, I think Oregon would have what it takes in order to win. Also, one thing I will say is that the Rose Bowl, I'm pretty sure, is in California, right?
Hmm.
And Ohio State's on that towards that eastern
That
side of
is
the
true.
of the country, so they will have to fly. I'm sure that they'll do the proper preparations for that, but it can be sometimes tough to play in another time zone.
Yeah, I that is a good point to bring up. Although I think for like bowl games, teams go pretty early.
Yeah, I assume that they take the
They go at
proper.
least 3 days early. Like I'm pretty sure Penn State for the Fiesta Bowl they landed today and they don't play till Tuesday. So because they have to do like media and stuff. So
Yeah,
the time probably won't be as
it's still far
big of
from
a
home though.
factor.
You know, nobody likes to travel that far.
That's a good point. That is a good point. But obviously in the travel game, Oregon definitely favors this.
Yeah,
Um, so
but
yeah, the I we don't I don't have any segments like written out because we were trying to just get this quick episode out. But if you want, you could stop sharing the screen right now. If you want, we can honestly we could like we could bring up like I want to rank players. Like if you could bring up one player that's left in the college football playoff
in the
to
college football playoff,
that could like really make a difference, um, that people don't really think about as much. Let's bring up some. Let's bring up a one player each. I'm sorry to like put you on the spot, but
no,
like,
that's fine.
but I think this could be interesting here because there's a lot of good players left on these teams. I'll start. If I had to pick somebody that I think could really make a difference, is honestly I think is Jalen Reed, safety for Penn State, or um, Harrison Wallace, wide receiver for Penn State. I know they're both two Penn State players, but those are two guys that I've highlighted or not highlighted, but I've watched all year, and people say Penn State doesn't have good wide receivers, but this kid has been consistent over the past couple weeks, and I think he could be due for a big game, especially with a Boise State offense that doesn't play the pass as well as some other teams, but that if he can really get going on the outside, that can just add another level to that Penn State offense that can really make their offense that much more dangerous. And then also when I talk about Jalen Reed, their safety, this is a guy who early on in the season was asked to move. So pretty much what was happening at the beginning of the year, what the plan was for their defense was they were gonna play Kevin Winston Jr., who is a highly looked at prospect for the draft. They were gonna play him high safety with another safety up at two high. They were gonna play two high safeties, and they were gonna put Jalen Reed in the nickel. But what happened was is Kevin Winston got hurt earlier on in the season, in week 2, and what happened was is Jalen Reed had to switch back to safety, which really messed up, which really switched around their defense. But when he got put back into safety, he did an unbelievable job and has been a big reason why Penn State's defense has held up for as much as they do. He's probably a top 5 safety in college football. So definitely look out for him. And he honestly he's been a reason why Penn State has been winning close games a lot this year.
Yeah, like if I had to pick a player out of all these players that is gonna make the biggest difference, I'm gonna have to go with I'm gonna say Jeremiah Love. That guy has been one of my more, when I tune into a Notre Dame game, he's been one of my guys that I like to watch a little bit. I mean, he's a hard runner. I think he's one of those, obviously he's no Ashton Genty. He's not putting up the crazy stats, but he's still putting up good stats. He has 7 yards per carry. I mean, he's been pretty much the only reason that Notre Dame has even been able to, function in terms of just having the offensive weapons. And I think that, he's going to be a pretty big determining factor whether he's on or off. I'm going to have to say, I think that he makes the biggest difference. And I think that he will bring them at least, past this quarterfinal. Could even, I never know. I don't know about that past the semifinal, but I think that there's a possibility. And I think that this will be the point that he puts his name really out there and he, makes a good run. I think like I said, I think he's their game changer.
Yeah, Jeremiah Love's definitely good. He had that 98-yard
Yeah,
touchdown run
I saw that.
against
That
Indiana.
was pretty good.
That was
To
insane.
bust open the first score of the game, that's just I think that that's what he's gonna bring in the playoffs.
Yeah, so if you guys have any other players that we forgot to mention that you really think could make a difference, leave it in the comments. Because there's so many good players left right now, whether or not they're on Boise State or even guys that aren't talked about on Oregon, uh, or Ohio State. There's so many good players, and there's so much depth at each team that uh, a lot of people miss. So if you guys think there's a really good player that doesn't get talked about as much, leave it in the comments. But uh, that should be it for this video. Thankfully, thank you, AJ, for recording this. Because if you weren't, honestly, if you weren't here, we wouldn't be getting this. We wouldn't be getting anything out to you guys before the quarterfinals. And he he definitely had to do some research last minute for this.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I
all I
think I think he
watch.
did a I think he did a great job. Um, he had some good analysis here and there. But thank you for coming back on. I know we got some. You were like a celebrity on the last one.
A celebrity. I have a small following. I have a I one thing I will say is I have a loyal following. The group of friends that I have are amazing guys. I'll say that.
Yeah. So yeah. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win the national championship. Definitely like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram. Make sure to follow AJ on Instagram. I'll leave it in the description. So that's pretty much it for now. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys watch the quarterfinals games. Enjoy the football while it lasts. There's not many more games left this year. So again, thank you for watching, and we will see you guys in the next episode. See ya.